What's up guys, it's Alex the Magician here, and in this video I want to talk about Necro. What I'm going to do in this video is I will just do an overview of just the town itself, what makes it good, and the general kind of mindset and strategy that you want to have on day 1 and 2 when you're thinking whether or not you want to take a restart, and just your general week 1 strategy as well. Now, I will not be doing an actual demonstration of turn 1 and 2 because what I decided to do is in 2 weeks I'm going to make a longer demonstration video of the entire first week. So for the sake of making this video shorter, I decided to just do an overview right now and then do a bigger demonstration later on. Now, Necro is certainly the tier 1 town. It is definitely the strongest town. And when you're playing for Necro, you're usually going to be starting at a pretty sizable gold disadvantage because when you are playing against something like Inferno or Cove, you can be paying anywhere from 7 to 8k to actually start for Necro. So just keep in mind that you're going to be starting at a pretty sizable gold disadvantage, and generally day 1 you're going to be focused on picking up gold and getting as much gold as possible, and taking objects like crypts, churchyards, maybe dwarven treasuries and things like that to get the additional gold so that you can get more heroes, so you can scout and snowball even more. Now, what makes Necro so good? So, Necro is essentially a town that can do anything. You can go for conses, you can go for hives and pickets, you can just snowball skeletons, you can go for vampires if you find a couple of estates or a vampires box. So essentially, you can do just about everything with Necro, and Necro does not necessarily need a great biome to be able to still have a good game, to still be able to break pretty quickly. Usually, worst case scenario, you can still break with Necro somewhere around early week 2, like 1-2-1, with the additional army that you're going to get, the additional skeletons you're going to get from the heroes that you will get on 1-2-1, and the units that you're going to get from your side villages as well. Now, but because of this, because Necro can essentially do anything, it can do a lot of different things, it's actually a bit challenging to learn how to play it properly. For me, I would say it was actually more challenging to learn how to play Necro than it was to learn how to play Luna, which was kind of surprising for me because I thought, before I started, I thought that Luna was going to be more difficult than anything to learn. But actually, the thing that makes Necro challenging is the fact that you can do so many different things. So if you could try to do everything, and just kind of get lost in the possibilities and opportunities, and what's going to happen is you're going to be way too slow and you're not going to have good tempo. I've certainly made that mistake before. I had like really rich biomes and I was trying to farm as much as I could from my biome, and I would be breaking like really late because of that. So generally what you want to do with Necro is you want to pick a direction in the early game and continue in that direction and just kind of, focus on that and kind of ignore the other things that distract you from that. So let's say if you're necroing up skeletons, then just focus on that, and you may even want to ignore things like hives and pickets unless you can take them easily with no losses. So because especially when you take hives, if you only have skeletons as your power stack and you don't have anything like angels or something like that, you will be actually losing skeletons. So it may not be worth it if you only take a couple of hives, and if your main strategy is to actually snowball your skeletons and break on skeletons and animate. So that's what I mean. On day 1 and 2, you generally want to pick that direction and you want to, stay consistent in that direction. And actually, one more thing that makes Necro good is the Animate Dead spell, of course, because you actually don't even need Earth Magic. Earth Magic does make it better, but worst case scenario, you don't even necessarily need Earth Magic, and Animate still lets you keep your skeletons. It's not like Resurrect, where you need Advanced Earth Magic to keep your units after the combat. With skeletons, any level, you don't even need Earth Magic. If you animate your skeletons, you will always keep them. So you basically just need spell power and knowledge to be able to animate enough skeletons. And then you can essentially do anything. Okay, so in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus mostly on the strategy of actually snowballing skeletons and actually necroing up and getting as many skeletons as possible, and, getting animate and, breaking and doing difficult fights on animate and skeletons. Because that is the most common thing that you're going to be doing with Necro. Other things like trading away your skeletons for hives are viable if you have a large number of hives. But generally, it's not as common. And snowballing skeletons and doing breaks on skeletons and having a Necro game is usually the most common thing to do. So, if we are deciding to go for the skeleton snowball, right? The first thing that you want to pay attention to is what kind of heroes are you starting in your tavern with. So there are certain heroes who are going to give you more skeletons, and there are certain heroes that are going to give you less skeletons. If you start with a castle hero, usually you're not going to get that many. Rangers are also not that great because you don't get. So here you see that's only like 25 skeletons, 26 skeletons here to actually snowball, convert into skeletons. So that's not that great. If you start with a tower hero, you can get 40 or 50. Or if you start with a hero like, let's say, Shakti or Drakon or Gretchen or Ignatus, those are like the jackpot heroes because they start with 3 stacks of the level 1 units and they're going to give you the most skeletons. So that's always a good thing. And if you start, conversely, with a hero like Lorelei or Valeska or Ufratin, that screws you because then you get like the minimum because they start with 3 stacks of the tier 2 units, and that means that you're not going to get a lot of them. So just pay attention to that, and that is not necessarily reason enough to restart or not, but it can be a pretty sizable factor. There's a big difference between, in the worst case scenario, having like 120 skeletons on day 1 and having like 180 skeletons on day 1. That is a big difference. Now, at the same time, you may want to pay attention to your Necro heroes. If you get a hero like Vitamina or Isra with the Necro specialty, that can also help you because if you find a lot of objects like imp caches where you can actually Necro up skeletons, it's good to do those on a Necro specialist because obviously you're going to get more skeletons like that. And also, if you find any Necro artifacts, those are also helpful. Now, besides that, as I've mentioned before, on day 1, you're going to be looking for gold, right? That is a lot of times going to be a deciding factor because a lot of times you're only going to have enough gold for one hero on day 1. So that means that you need to pick up enough gold right away to buy another hero and to get more, buy your other hero and get the skeleton transformer, and then, for example, have Galthran do crypts and churchyards or dwarven treasuries or something like that to get more gold. So generally, day 1 and 2, that's going to be your main focus, is you're going to be trying to take these crypts, take churchyards and things like that to actually, and pick up as much gold as possible in these chests. Generally, you're not going to be leaving the chests for experience because you're going to need the gold from them. Now, assuming that you are continuing, assuming you were able to get a decent amount of skeletons, or decent amount of gold, and you did some crypts or something like that, then what? So assuming we're going for that Necro game, right? Assuming that we're going for the actual skeleton snowball, you're going to be looking for objects that are going to help you snowball your skeletons. So obviously these are things like the cursed temples, even the graveyards help because you get zombies, although, the cursed temples are obviously better because you get 14 skeletons and you don't pay anything for them. But in the graveyards you have to pay for 8 zombies. But the other things that usually help you more are prisons. If you get a decent amount of prisons, and especially if you get free prisons, that's actually really good. And you can always get a decent hero in the prisons, like you can, get a hero who has earth magic, or a mage hero who can actually animate more by getting better magic stats than Galthran will. And, of course, getting the skeletons, right? So if you get somebody like Ignatus in the prison, that's obviously going to be a jackpot, right? Because you're going to get, like 70 or 80 skeletons just from that. And so here we can actually see that we have 3 prisons right here. So that usually is going to be somewhere around plus 100, 120 skeletons from those 3 prisons. So that's actually really good. Like, assuming right now we have somewhere around 150 skeletons, that's going to be close to 300 skeletons just from all of these prisons. So that actually basically means that I can focus on just taking these prisons and converting the units that I get from them into skeletons, and then after that building animate and going for the break. And that could be like the highest tempo that we can have in this game here. Now, the other thing that you want to pay attention to, well, you also have other objects, like you have imp caches, for example. Those help you necro skeletons. Actually, so this imp cache here, for example. So if you have a lot of those can be helpful as well. And obviously things like churchyards, dwarven treasuries, those help also. Now, the other important thing that you want to consider with Necro, especially when you're going for a Necro game, is spell power and knowledge, right? So you want to find artifacts that give you, so this artifact is really good, for example, the Breastplate of Brimstone. This is decent, it gives you +3 knowledge. You definitely want artifacts like that, especially if Galthran is going to end up being your main. Because Galthran is actually not going to have really good magical stats since he is a Death Knight. So if he is your main, you definitely want to boost his knowledge and spell power so he can animate more. That is something that is quite important when you are going for a Necro game, when you're going for a skeleton and animate game. You definitely want to find some artifacts for spell power and knowledge. Or conversely, you want to try to main a hero who's actually going to get more magical stats. So, you know, Grindin would be great since he has Earth Magic. Labetha is good. Anybody like Elishar or Aiden or Andra, those are good because they're intelligence specialists. So if you can get a hero like that in your tavern, you perhaps want to consider maining them, at least giving them some experience to see if they get Earth Magic or something like that. Because if you don't, for example, if you have to play a game where you cannot find any good spell power or knowledge artifacts, you definitely don't want to main Galthran if you're going for a Necro game, because you're just not going to have a lot of spell power or knowledge to be able to animate a lot of skeletons. So then you want to kind of have a mage who can actually animate more. And as we're doing that, as we're necroing up as many skeletons as possible, as I mentioned, opening prisons, picking up the cursed temples as we can, doing imp caches and things like that, you may want to think about other objects, but they are not going to be essential. So, for example, in this game, I would probably ignore the pickets. And actually here, we have a lot of objects, right? We have, on one screen, this looks amazing, 3 pickets and 2 hives over here, right? And then we also have 2 more hives over here. I would probably ignore that. I would probably ignore all of that. Because, as I mentioned earlier, you're not going to be able to do hives without losing a lot of skeletons, so that's going to be kind of counterproductive. You know, I could technically go for the hives and build my wyvern stack, but that's going to take me way longer. So here, for example, like, let's assume, turn 1 we open this prison, turn 2, turn 3 we open these prisons, and then let's say we build animate on turn 5 or 6, we could go for the break on turn 5 or 6, feasibly. But if I end up farming all of these pickets and hives and stuff, that is going to... I'm definitely not going to be breaking on 115 or 116. So for the sake of tempo here, I would actually focus on opening prisons and snowballing my skeletons and building animate and breaking on basically just animate and skeletons. And if the desert is not good, which in this case actually looks like the desert is kind of small, if we don't get anything good in the desert, we can always go back and farm our biome, right? So you always have that in your back pocket, right? But this is exactly what I mean, kind of understanding what you want to do and ignoring certain things that do not fall in line with that strategy. So here, if we picked the strategy of actually snowballing our skeletons and going for, animate and breaking on skeletons, we want to focus on that and essentially ignore all our pickets, all our hives, because that's just going to slow us down. Now, if you do have conses, I will say conses are always really good. Conses are always good for Necro because I will actually leave the link to the cons guide in the stream description below. Or I mean in the video description below. You can actually, if you do it right, and if you have a good enough stack of skeletons, you can actually do conses with basically no losses, assuming the griffins don't get any morales. So if you do get, like, this cons here is kind of far away, so I'm not sure when I would have scouted it. I probably wouldn't have gone for that, but let's say if I had a cons here or here, and I was able to take that on, let's say, day 1, 2, 3, then I would definitely do that, because even if I'm not breaking, even if I'm only breaking on skeletons, angels help you do a lot of stuff. So angels can help you do pickets without losses and hives without losses. Like with pickets, even if you only have one angel, that means you get first speed, and that means that you can actually haste your skeletons and actually do the picket without any losses. And with hives, you can't necessarily do that, but let's say you get, 2 or 3 angels, then you can basically do hives on side heroes with your just your angels, right? So just keep that in mind. Conses definitely really good for Necro. Even if you're going for skeletons, they're always going to be beneficial. Pickets and hives, not always. More situational. So just keep that in mind, that let's say if we, like in this game, we were not able to take any conses and get any angels or units that would help us do pickets and hives with no losses. In that case, I would be ignoring the hives and the pickets, and I would just be focusing on prisons and snowballing my skeletons and breaking as fast as possible with animate dead and skeletons, and then with the plan of potentially going back to farm the rest of our biome if the center was not good. Because again, as I've mentioned before in my description video of Jebba's Cross, your goal is to get in the center, because the center is going to have much better artifacts generally, and things, much juicier stuff to farm than your biome. And obviously your opponent is also going to be rushing for the center, right? So it's kind of a race on who gets to take this stuff first. And, and if you take that first, then he doesn't have an opportunity to farm the center, and then you can go back and farm your biome if you want to. He's not going to get to your biome that quickly, right? So that's kind of the mindset and the strategy behind that. So yeah, again, here, just going for skeletons, opening these prisons, getting as many skeletons as possible, getting animate, and then going for the break. And then if it doesn't go well, if the center doesn't go well, going back with the thought of going back and farming like the pickets and these additional hives and these pickets and hives here. Okay, so that's just about everything that I wanted to mention about Necro. As you can see, there's definitely a lot of thought that goes into this, and that's why there's a lot of elements that have to come together for you to have a good game with Necro. Because a lot of elements that you have to put together, basically. You need to decide the direction, you need to have objects to be able to Necro a decent amount of skeletons, you need to have a good amount of knowledge and spell power, and you also need to be able to roll animate. So try to keep all of these things in mind when you're trying to play Necro, when you're trying to decide how to play Necro and kind of plan out your game and, on turn 1 and 2, decide whether or not you want to take a restart. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. Thank you all so much for watching. Again, stay tuned for the other video that I'm going to have in about 2 weeks. I think next week I'm going to do a week 1 demonstration for Dungeon, and then week after that I will do a week 1 demonstration for Necro. So if you guys want to see more Heroes 3 content, feel free to follow my Twitch stream. I stream every day from Thursday to Monday, starting around 10 a.m. Eastern European time. So feel free to follow me so you guys get notified when I go live. And feel free to subscribe to this channel as well, as I do release new videos every week. So if you subscribe, you will get notified when new videos come out. Alright, so thank you guys so much for watching, and stay tuned for more videos. Peace out.